We are now live on Facebook. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to today's
Yes.
session. I am Ishan Sharma, founder of Karwan, the Heritage Exploration Initiative. And आज हम बात करने वाले हैं दो ऐसे लोगों की या दो ऐसे शख्सियतों की, two personalities who lived here, those who talked about love and loved. They always preached about love. Those were Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia and Hazrat Amir Khusro. Or whenever I think about Amir Khusro साहब, I am always reminded of two couplets, दो अशार उनके याद आते हैं. The one is खुसरो दरिया प्रेम का उल्टी वा की धार, जो उतरा सो डूब गया और जो डूबा सो पार.
क्या बात.
O Khusro, the river of love runs in strange directions. The one who jumps into it drowns, and one who drowns is the one who gets along. खुसरो पाती प्रेम की बिरला बाचे कोय, वेद कुरान पोथी पढ़े, प्रेम बिना का होए. And I translate that as Khusro who reads the book of love. What are the holy books, Ved, Qurans, and others without love? So to talk about the love in times of hate, the story of Nizamuddin Aulia and Amir Khusro, we have with us a very special guest, Mehru Jaffer ma'am, joining us from Lucknow, the city of Nawabs. Mehru Jaffer is a Lucknow-born author and journalist. She was born and brought up in Lucknow, a certain space in India that is not just a city, but a state of being, as she writes. After graduating in English literature from Lucknow University, a career in journalism was launched with a job at Pioneer newspaper that is very popular in Uttar Pradesh. I'm not sure about other states. She has taught Islam-related topics at University of Vienna, Austria, and at Vienna American Webster University. She is the author of the Book of Muhammad, the Book of Muinuddin Chishti, the Book of Nizamuddin Aulia, all published and marketed by Penguin India, and all the books are available on Amazon. So those who wish to check that out, please go ahead. Please get those books from Amazon. So, ma'am, welcome to the session. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. It is truly an honor to host you. And without further ado, I would formally invite you to deliver today's Karwan special lecture, Love in Times of Hate, the story of Nizamuddin Aulia and Amir Khusro. Over to you,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ishan. But I must begin with a confession that I am no historian. I'm just a student, a lover of history. I've taught myself history as an adult because as a student in school, I did not like my history teacher and I did not like attending history classes. So there was a huge gap, and when better sense prevailed in my life, I started to read history on my own. So please forgive me for barging onto a platform that is the pride of blue blooded historians who sometimes don't like non historians talking about history and heritage experts. For that very reason, it is my absolute privilege to be part of this platform, and it is a privilege for me to be in your company, Ishan. I ask of you to please lend me your ear for just a while to get a perspective on a particular period from the past from a non historian. I do promise to bring to history the fragrance of literature, which is my field of study, and the thrill of reportage, because journalism is my profession. So, thank you, Ishan, for the invite, for allowing me to interact with your audience at Caravan. Today, we will take a look at the very special relationship between Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia and his devoted disciple Amir Khusro. Both of these fantastic human beings lived in the 13th century till till the first quarter of the 14th century. We will talk today about Amir Khusro, who had, with great affection, called Nizamuddin Nijam. And Nijam, as you know, is the way in Khadi Boli, you would pronounce Nizam, because in Khadi Boli, Z is pronounced as J. While Nizamuddin had addressed Amir Khusro sometimes as, as God's Turk and sometimes as Indian Turk, the poet Amir Khusro has left numerous verses in praise of his close friend and spiritual mentor Nizamuddin. And I have tried to translate into English Chhap Tilak for you. You know the famous Kavali Chhap Tilak Sab Chini. This verse by Khusro is still very popular with music lovers and those in love with poetry, and which is a glowing example if you listen to the words carefully and if you try to understand the spirit behind the words. This is a glowing example of Amir Khusro's intense feeling towards Nizamuddin. I may repeat the reading again to make many other points regarding the very special relationship shared between the two. So here goes the English translation as I imagine it of Chhap Tilak. Your gaze locked on me. Your gaze locked on me. You strip me of my beauty, my worth. You offer me a drink, a cup of love. Your intoxicating gaze locked on me, and I on a high. I stake all that I have for you, Nijam, my body, my soul. You have made me you. His gaze locked on you. Your life, Khusro, is no longer yours. Khusro, you are now Nijam. His gaze locked on you, Khusro, the green bangles in pieces as Nijam reaches out for the fair wrist of Khusro, dyed in his color, his bride. His gaze locked on you, stripped of your beauty, stripped of your worth by his gaze locked on you. Now the question is, why would we want to talk today about the friendship between Nizamuddin and Amir Khusro from that long ago? Perhaps because revisiting the past makes us deal with our present a little more confidently. That then is enough reason, I feel, to keep in touch with our collective past. I will try to transport you to the period in the South Asian region between 1238 and 1325. You have to travel with me today some 8 centuries back in time to see if there are any similarities in life then and now. If there are, then what may we learn from the past to resolve problems faced by us in the present? Please bear with me as I tell you how we decided to talk about Nizamuddin and Amir Khusro today. The two have been on my mind as I looked for answers to increasing cruelty of some citizens against fellow citizens in my country. Lynching of fellow citizens seemed no longer a singular incident by a crazy citizen. Unchecked, the incidents of cruelty threaten to become a norm. This is a great worry. As I breathlessly hear of one more lynching, one more rape, one more arrest, one more riot, one more fellow citizen vanish from the face of the earth, it becomes clear that these incidents are no longer an aberration, but even encouraged and applauded. Such cruelty taking place in front of my eyes numbed thinking and paralyzed me into inaction. I was sleepless, wondering how to deal with a wave of almost organized, nearly institutionalized cruelty taking place around me. On my own, by myself, the question remains, what does an individual citizen do in the absence of vanishing institutional support, I still wonder. And that is when the life of Nizamuddin returned to inspire. I thank Ishan for welcoming the title and allowing me to expand on this topic. I was reminded of the book I had written on two mystics of the Chishti Sufi silsila. The Book of Nizamuddin Aulia was published in 2012. I returned to all the research I had done for this book and found that yes, Nizamuddin and Khusro had indeed lived at a time when excessive violence was the order of the day. They were also treacherous times. Nizamuddin lived in humble surroundings in what is now the neighborhood named after him in Delhi. Khusro came from a family of courtiers. He was the court poet of several rulers, much admired and very wealthy. But fame and money did not always make him happy. The intrigues at court often got to him. His mind calmed down and his soul was at peace only in the company of Nizamuddin. That is the beginning of a shift in Khusro's attraction for glitter and glamour towards the spiritual world of mysticism. He was overcome with happiness and gratitude in the home of Nizamuddin Aulia and by his side. In the presence of Nizamuddin, Khusro's poetry was dictated by his heart. Instead of only composing verbose eulogies about the ruler of the day in exchange for money, Nizamuddin encouraged Khusro to write poetry also in the western Uttar Pradesh dialect of Khadi Boli so that many more ordinary people could appreciate his verses just like Nizamuddin very much appreciated the verses written by Khusro. Khusro watched Nizamuddin spend all his nights and all his days in adoration of his beloved creator. He was inspired to write verses filled with yearning for his creator in imitation of his mentor. And when the crowds that collected in countless numbers saw the love and respect exchanged between Nizamuddin and Amir Khusro, they too aspired for a similar relationship with other human beings. In the same way, clearly the friendship that evolved between Nizamuddin and Amir Khusro stood out refreshingly before the whole wild world like a rose in the midst of a garden reduced to thorns. Nizamuddin was born in 1238 and Amir Khusro about 15 or 17 years later in 1253. Both died in 1325 and are buried side by side in Delhi's Nizamuddin neighborhood. Surely, most of you already know so much about both Nizamuddin and Amir Khusro, about the spiritual aura of Nizamuddin and the literary ingenuity of his close friend and dearest disciple, Amir Khusro. Both are popular memories and remembered to this day. The Basti of Nizamuddin in Delhi thrives and is a great example of living heritage. Where Nizamuddin had once lived is now a shrine, and thousands of devotees visit the shrine wishing for barakat or blessings even from the memory of Nizamuddin. On Thursday evenings, the poetry of Amir Khusro is recited around the shrine of Nizamuddin with great joy. However, a fellow journalist in Delhi recently told me after reading the announcement of today's talk that he was at the Dargah about 3 days ago. लेकिन रौनक नहीं थी वहाँ, he reports. I asked, दरगाह पे रौनक नहीं थी? And he said, जी हाँ, सच पूछिए तो रौनक अब कहीं नहीं है. ऐसा लगता है कहीं कोई उत्साह ही नहीं है. I don't know if my fellow journalist in Delhi exaggerates. I'm talking to you from Lucknow. I don't know what is happening in Delhi. And from the bottom of my heart, I pray that I am fearful out of paranoia. I pray that my fellow journalist is exaggerating. To take away Ronak from living is to find that little else is left in life. But if this feeling of my fellow journalists is shared by many others, the question is, how have we reduced ourselves to this state of utter uljan, restlessness? How have we managed to reduce life to this when the very zest, the eros of being alive seems to be squeezed out of living? Let us move back then to the period between 1238 and 1325 in search of some answers. This is during the lifetime of Nizamuddin and Amir Khusro. To see if we can make sense of the problems we face today by trying to find out what we were we in the past, where have we reached today, and what may be and what may become of us tomorrow. Much of the information here is pulled out from the research I did to write the book of Nizamuddin. To prepare this presentation for you, I have divided the presentation into 5 parts. We'll talk a little bit about Nizamuddin, then about Amir Khusro, then the times in which Nizamuddin and Amir Khusro lived in Delhi, a little bit about Sufi mysticism, and then a little bit more about the friendship between the two. So, all these little bits will probably end up in one big bit. So, about Nizamuddin. Nizamuddin Aulia is the most famous of the Chishti Sufis. He is the disciple of Baba Farid. He came to Delhi in 1258 from Badaयूं and settled in what is called today the Nizamuddin Basti in Delhi. In his lifetime, 7 sultans ruled over Delhi, but he did not befriend any one of them. When a sultan expressed his desire to meet him, he would say, I have 2 doors in my home. If the sultan enters through one door, I will go out of the other. The home of Nizamuddin always kept its doors open mainly for the poor, who were also the majority population. Nizamuddin was visited daily by thousands of people for more than 40 years. Barani, a chronicler of that time, writes that from early morning till late into the night, nobles and plebeians, rich, poor, learned, illiterate, citizens, villagers, soldiers, warriors, free men, slaves, men, women, young, old, shopkeepers, servants, children, slaves visited the home of Nizamuddin. The Khanka or his home served as a community center to help and to support people living in the neighborhood, as well as travelers coming from other districts or from abroad. If a house caught fire, money was immediately sent to the family who was left without shelter. If a widow was starving, Nizamuddin would provide for her. And on his way to his mother's grave or a walk elsewhere, he would distribute money to the poor and to prostitutes. Nizamuddin's life in Delhi created a bridge among different social and religious groups. It held the ordinary citizen together within a moral frame that the state was not capable of offering. Nizamuddin talked to his visitors about a spiritual philosophy of tolerance, acceptance, goodness, and of an overwhelming and universal love. Not love for just one God, not love just for my God and not your God, but a universal love for everything that is in this world. Faith in the creator of the world was far more valued by Nizamuddin than any one religion. Nizamuddin did not take love for granted. Every moment of his life, he continued to teach himself to practice love, to be a better lover, to be able to love in a better way, in a more gentle, more intense way. And all those who saw Nizamuddin do all this jumped onto the path of love paved by Nizamuddin and tried to emulate his walk. The one thing that was banned by Nizamuddin was a serious engagement with those in power. The emphasis was always and only on love, which he was sure leads one to realization of the divine. For him, faith was important. He said that love of God means love of humanity. His is a message of universal love and brotherhood. He said that those who love God for the sake of human beings, those who love human beings for the sake of God are the best human beings. This is the best way to love and to adore God, by loving the creatures that God has created. After having taught himself and intoxicated those around him with the ecstasy of loving another human being, like Khusro translates this into verse, and which I will try to sing for you. प्रेम घटी का मदवा पे लेके, प्रेम घटी का मदवा पे लेके, मोहे सोहागन की मुझसे नैना मिलाई के छाप तिलक. So now Khusro in this verse is talking about uh, uh, being a Suhagan of Nizamuddin. Now this Suhagan is not the same Suhagan as Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge. This the idea of marriage, bride, and Suhagan is the idea of the ultimate union between the human being and his creator. So, uh, I mean, you have to keep reading and rereading the verses of Khusro till the spiritual aspect of the words uh, penetrate within your soul. So here I'm not going into translating each word, but I wanted to stress that Suhagan, marriage, urs, um, bride, all this means that this is the moment when I am united once again with my creator, because life actually um, at birth is a separation from your creator. So that is what causes suffering. When the child is born and forced out of the womb and is separated and stands vulnerable, feeble, fragile in this world, totally lost. And then we spend the rest of our life trying to feel at home in this world, and also aspiring and pining and yearning to become once more united with my creator, like I was in my mother's womb. So Nizamuddin died in 1325, at last united with his creator after having yearned for this union throughout his life. After Nizamuddin, the Chishtis did not stay around Delhi. They dispersed to practice their message to other parts of South Asia as well. So that was a bit. There's lots more to Nizamuddin, but I gave you a little bit about him and a little bit now about Amir Khusro. Following the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate, the cities of northern India received a constant flood of immigrants from Iran, Afghanistan, and the rest of Central Asia. This is beginning of the 13th century. The Mongols were at this time on a rampage. Among the refugees escaping the Mongol fury were the ancestors of Amir Khusro belonging to a Turkish tribe of Central Asia, probably around the area which is Bukhara and Samarkand. His father was employed at the court of Iltutmish, Turkic Sultan of Delhi between 1210 and 1236. Amir Khusro's mother was Indian. She was the daughter of a nobleman who was, I think, the defense minister at one of the Sultan's court. Amir Khusro was born in 1253 in Patiali in the Eta district of Uttar Pradesh. This is the area, the electoral area of Mulayam Singh Yadav, with whom we have been pleading to please do something about Amir Khusro's home in Patiali so that um, he is remembered in a more tangible way. Imadud ul Mulk, the maternal grandfather of Amir Khusro, was rich and educated. This was the world where the young poet grew up, completely opposite to the world of Nizamuddin Aulia, who was brought up by his mother in very poverty stricken circumstances, whereas Khusro, who was about 15, 17 years younger to Nizamuddin, was surrounded by luxury and high society. In the magnificent assemblies of his grandfather's residence, musicians and poets, scholars and mystics were constant visitors and also the constant companion of Amir Khusro. This is the world in which Amir Khusro became a well-known and acclaimed poet. He was 20 years old when his grandfather died. As a young poet, he had already composed his first collection of poems. In the following 15 years, he made a name for himself. At the age of 35 years, he was appointed to the court of Delhi and later served as chief librarian of Jalaluddin, the first sultan of Delhi of the Khalji dynasty. So this Amir Khusro knew Nizamuddin Aulia from a very young age because when Nizamuddin Aulia moved from Badaयूं to make a career for himself in Delhi, he was a tenant in one corner of Amir Khusro's palatial home in Delhi. And so Amir Khusro and uh, Nizamuddin Aulia, they had bumped into each other. They knew each other from that very early age. Amir Khusro might have been 10 or 11 years old. But it is at the age of 35 years when Khusro is appointed to the court of Delhi that and becomes the chief librarian of Jalaluddin, that he begins to visit Nizamuddin regularly. Delhi was the envy by this time of other world capital cities like Baghdad, Cairo, Constantinople, because of the presence of peerless men of extraordinary talent like Khusro. Writes Khusro about his beloved Delhi. If a Khurasani, Greek, or Arab comes here, he will not face any problems, for the people here will treat him kindly as their own, making him feel happy and at ease. And if they jest with him, they do so with blooming smiles. So, this is what Amir Khusro has written about the atmosphere of Delhi in one of his works of prose. Amir Khusro is remembered as an ardent follower, friend, and finally disciple of Nizamuddin. The reason of Khusro's popularity and prestige throughout the Sultanate period was both artistic and material. He served six monarchs and survived their political intrigues. He avoided conflict with the rulers even when they were hostile to his spiritual master Nizamuddin. And of course, the rulers, most of them were hostile to Nizamuddin. Firstly, because the Sufi was more popular amongst the people of Delhi, than the ruler, and also because Nizamuddin never went to pay any kind of respect or never bothered to flatter whoever the ruler was. So this used to always um, make the rulers very angry, and some of them even troubled Nizamuddin a lot. In those days, poetry had served as a medium for communicating with the world at large. And a court poet, like our smartphones today, and a court poet was a spokesman for the ruler. The relationship, therefore, between a patron and poet was a delicate one. Like the poet could barely afford to upset his patron, the ruler of Delhi. Khusro's strong connection with the Sultanate ruling class did not prevent him, however, from pursuing a spiritual path under the guidance of Nizamuddin, which is the main inspiration of his soul searching poetry. So here I will suggest to you, we are doing this talk in English because I suspect we have lots of people interested in Khusro and Nizamuddin Aulia from non-Hindustani speaking areas of South Asia, outside of India. So that is why we decided to speak in English, and also to introduce Amir, Khusro, and Nizamuddin Aulia um, to those who are not conversant in either Hindi or Urdu and Persian, and are still interested in the personality of these two great people. So I borrowed a lot. Can you see this book? If if you want to know where uh, I got help with translating Khusro into English, then in the Bazaar of Love is a fabulous book, Selected Poetry of Amir Khusro, translated by Paul Lusensky and Sunil Sharma. So please, there's a wonderful long introduction about Delhi, about these two men, and about Khusro's poetry. So, in the space between your footsteps, writes Khusro about Nizamuddin Aulia, he says, in the space between your footsteps, one enters the unfolding union of both worlds, the material world as well as the spiritual world. In the space between your footsteps, one enters unfolding union of both worlds. That is why Khusro likes to be very often at the feet of Nizamuddin, because in the space between your footsteps, one enters the unfolding union of both worlds. You have codified the path of Farid, here referring to Nizamuddin Aulia's mentor, Baba Farid. You have codified, Nizam, the path of Farid, and that is why they call you the code, the Nizam. Nizam is the Persian word for code. So you have codified the path of Farid, and that is why they call you the code, the Nizam. 100 noble souls in heaven have been melted down, Nijam, and stamped with your name. Your court is the Qibla, the direction of prayer. Qibla is the direction in which you pray. Your court is the Qibla, and angels fly to your roof like doves. The tonic of your words is soothing to the melancholia of those yearning for the real, those yearning to find out what is the truth, what is real. The lowly Khusro will have eternal life now that he is enslaved by you for 1,000 lives. And why does a disciple, a devotee, take pride in being enslaved, imprisoned, chained by his mentor because of the trust and conviction that the mentor will lead him on the path of liberation, on the path of union with his true self. So that is why if I have to become a slave, I'm willing to do that for that ultimate ecstasy. This enslavement will culminate into. So you understand how beautiful this is. You have to read it to yourself, to find it even more beautiful than somebody explaining it to you. So it was a rule at the home of Nizamuddin that neither he nor his friends engage with the corridors of power, because the corridors of power tend to confuse human beings. The corridors of power always tell you this is important, when in actual fact, what they are suggesting is not important to you in life. So, therefore, Nizamuddin said, follow your heart. Don't imitate or try to find peace in the corridors of power. However, Amir Khusro enjoyed the best of both worlds, of the royal court as well as the courtyard of Nizamuddin. Now, how did he manage to do that when Nizamuddin had clearly forbidden that anybody who comes to him must have nothing to do with the corridors of power? How did he manage to do that? I suspect with the consent of his beloved mentor Nizamuddin himself. And this, Ishan, is then the topic for another talk, because it's fascinating to also check out the worldly, the politics of Nizamuddin, which was so brilliant because he had to save his life, he had to save his khanqa, he had to save his home, which had become a community center, not only for his own safety, but for the thousands of people who came for food, for peace, for help. So to do that, he had to play a certain kind of politics. And so that is a very, very interesting topic. Now, what was the time that Nizamuddin Aulia and Amir Khusro lived in looked like? So at this time, Delhi was something like this. The Turkish invasion of northern India began earlier, but the Turks decided to live in Delhi only from beginning of the 13th century. To make a home in Delhi, the Turks had to first battle Muslims already living in the Multan, Lahore, Punjab areas before reaching Delhi from modern day Afghanistan. So it's not as if all the Muslims of the world or all the Muslims of South Asia were in on one side against people of other cultures and religion. It was not like that. At this time, individual rulers were threatened by the invader, irrespective of the invader's religion. Local rulers were fearful of losing their land, power, and wealth, just like rulers belonging to the same religion were always fearful of losing their kingdom to each other. Historians recall this period in South Asia as one that had very close cultural ties with the Persian world. Indian influence often crossed the Afghanistan area to rub shoulders with the world of the Persians. With the Turks came a new economic system that was city based. New centers of political and economic power in surrounding areas of Delhi came up. The reason why the Turks wanted to live in South Asia are political, economic, social, and I don't know how much religious. The condition, it's only in contemporary time that religion has taken over our entire life and kind of swallowed up the other good reasons that also make up a society and are essential to individual citizens. The condition of the places they came from, like modern day Central Asia, Afghanistan, Iran, was chaotic. During the 12th century and the 13th century, a large number of scholars, poets, administrators, warriors turned to India for refuge as Mongol hordes destroyed their homes. The first thing on their mind was to find another home, was to find refuge. Apart from establishing a sultanate, the immigrant warriors established a tradition of scholarship, which they had brought brought into India from the Persian world, making small towns in North India like Badaयूं and Etah centers of learning. It is essential to mention Badaयूं and Etah in western Uttar Pradesh because Nizamuddin was born in the former and Amir Khusro in the latter. And apart from Persian, both Nizamuddin and Amir Khusro also spoke the local language and dialect of the area that they were born in. This is why Khadi Boli made its way into the writing of Amir Khusro, to the utter delight, of course, of Nizamuddin. This was a time of hectic exchange of cultures, ideas, arts. The cities of the Delhi Sultanate around 1206 contributed to the birth of new social classes like artisans, merchants, moneylenders, without disturbing the local language or way of life. The Delhi in which both Nizamuddin and Amir Khusro lived was home to a vibrant urban cosmopolitan society. This was a society very unique with a very rich cultural setting, providing great challenges as well as opportunities. So here is another quote. I forget from where I have this quote, but Delhi was the home of all arts, fine and coarse. In the suburbs and slums of the great capital, the pimps, prostitutes, and gamblers of Hindustan collected to ply their abominable trades. And along with them, as a heaven sent antidote, also came innumerable mystics. The Mongols managed to conquer large parts of the world, but they could never conquer South Asia, now fortified by the Turks. We never ever talk about this, as we pull down mosques and vilify the medieval rulers of South Asia. We always forget that it was the Turks who prevented the Mongols from uh, entering and conquering South Asia. In more peaceful times, many Mongols were allowed to settle down in Delhi in a neighborhood called Moghalpur. Mughal being one pronunciation of the word Mongol. The immigrants were grateful to find refuge in South Asia, and Delhi also benefited from the talent, mentality, customs that the immigrants brought. The migration made the city wealthy and gave it a lush, colorful character. There were also spies everywhere. The atmosphere of the time was highly suspicious. The most common means to gain power or settle businesses at this time was to blind or to poison rivals. Assassins, robbers, thieves were found along each route and around every corner, along with poets and dancers and musicians. There were sinners and plenty in Delhi then, but there were also saints. So now a little bit about the practice of saints, which is Sufi mysticism, very briefly, long before the establishment of Turkish rulers in South Asia, wandering fakirs and saints also came here, along with warriors. But what we remember today are the dreadful warriors who came, and not the traders, the fakirs, the scholars, the saints who also came around the same time. Some set up mystic centers at a number of places. A systematic organization of silsila or order, school began almost simultaneously with the foundation of the Sultanate of Delhi. Two of the most important mystic orders were the Chishti and the Sohrawardi spread far and wide. The Chishti teachings, of which I know a little more than about the other schools of Sufism, said that the creator of the world resides within the being of each human being. Now, this saying that God मोहे कहाँ ढूंढो रे साधो मैं तो तेरे पास में. So if you say God is within you, that means the ulama, the mediator, the middleman becomes irrelevant. You know, the priests who try to earn money by saying that I'm the mediator between God and you, they become redundant. Their role becomes redundant. This is one big reason for the Muslim clergy to be against the Sufis, that the world needs humanity above everything else, said the mystics. The world needs peace. Human beings need someone to share their pain and sorrow with. I was about to say we don't need mosques and temples as much as we need peace, as much as we need large-hearted, magnanimous human beings who will are ready to share their pain and sorrow with those who are in distress. Since the Chishti were willing to fulfill these basic needs of ordinary human beings, Dalit, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, I don't know, atheists, Buddhists, Jain, flocked to Nizamuddin because everyone was equal in his eyes. For him, for Nizamuddin, the religion of others did not matter. Humanity did. From his mentor, Baba Farid, Nizamuddin had learned to serve the creator of the world by serving the roofless, the sick, and the hungry. Nizamuddin had faith in his beloved Allah, but the religion that he practiced was to try and bring happiness to the human heart. So, not only he did not spend time only trying to please Allah, but also to please the every human being that came to him. Nizamuddin had learned to practice humanity through example. Baba Farid, his mentor, had repeatedly told him that bringing happiness to the human heart is all that matters in life. Is all that matters in life is to make another human being happy. We've forgotten this maxim. We've forgotten to practice this. Nizamuddin's life was as generous as the river. It was as warm as the sun and as hospitable as the earth. Nizamuddin did not create divisions in society, but united citizens. During his lifetime, mysticism exercised a profound calming influence on society. Cultural synthesis was seen at its best at most Sufi centers. Here, ideas were freely exchanged without fear of being hanged or punished. Nizamuddin is adored to this day as he made a personal quest for a union with the creator of the world into a socially significant movement. You know, Nizamuddin could have spent his entire life trying as an ascetic, trying to live only for himself and to find happiness only for himself. But he did that plus flagging off a very socially significant movement which was inclusive and engaged with other human beings who did not have the confidence to seek the right path or to seek nirvana on their own. For him, for Nizamuddin, the highest form of religious devotion was to feed the hungry, provide clothes to the naked, and to spend time with those in distress. It was the desire of Nizamuddin to see that each visitor left him with relief in the heart and with a smile. This clubbing together of religion with serving all human beings in distress had a revolutionary effect on society. So if we practice this today, we can still bring a revolution in society. The selfless services of community leaders like Nizamuddin inspired many to introduce a set of moral and spiritual element into their daily life. So it was not prayers only at Jumma, not the ritualistic once a month or once a week, but daily life. Every moment of your life, you tried to be good, kind, generous, sharing, and inclusive. The majority of population, like always, was the most troubled, and Sufis were the only hope of the distressed people in society. Social equality was practiced at the home of Nizamuddin. The prince and the pauper received the same attention, making the Sultan's court and Nizamuddin's courtyard symbols of two opposing institutions. Because at the Sultan's court, only people who mattered, people who were wealthy, people who were influential were allowed, whereas in Nizamuddin's courtyard, uh, everyone was allowed, and special attention was given to the most needy. While members of royal families murdered siblings and close relatives to assure themselves an unchallenged throne, while kings and princes fought enemies daily, piling up decapitated heads of the defeated in the yard of the palace to discourage further defections, mystics prayed and continued to quietly serve the needy and to share and to inspire each other with heartfelt stories of love and of compassion. The presence of mystics in Delhi had acted as a corrective to the political hysteria of that period. So, the last little bit, yes, I might be running out of time, but I have to uh, share with you this last bit. So the friendship between Nizamuddin Aulia and Amir Khusro against this background um, is very special. When I first took myself back in history, I tried not to judge or to compare that society so long ago to my own. It is of no interest to me, for example, whether the relationship between Nizamuddin and Amir Khusro was sexual in nature or not, simply because I don't know. There is nothing on record to suggest that it was. However, there are lines written by Khusro addressing Nizamuddin where Khusro says in rhyme that Nizamuddin, Nijam, I kiss your threshold and not your lips. So you can make whatever you want to make from this little line from a verse. Traditionally, mystics do not share any intense, intimate, and personal experience with the public. The climax of a mystical experience of any Sufi is union with the Creator. The journey of an Auliya like Nizamuddin is a continuous attempt to aspire, to anticipate that ultimate moment of oneness with the divine beloved, which is assured surely at death. But some Auliya experience divine union in their lifetime. The mystic finds it impossible and is also forbidden by their respective tariqah to share the ecstasy experienced of being drowned in longing for the beloved with others. However impossible the mystic may find it to talk about batin or his inner personal journey, his day-to-day conduct or zahir actions are there for the world to witness and to emulate. The mentor or Auliya tries to live an exemplary life every day with the single purpose of being worthy of the anticipated union with the Creator. And that decent conduct by the Auliya before the public inspires devotees to follow in the footsteps of the Master. And Auliya is a mystic who has reached that stage in life when his sole beloved is the creator of the world. While the desire of a disciple or devotee is to get his love accepted and acknowledged at least by his spiritual mentor, already so close to the creator of the world and representing divine love on earth. What mentors on the path of mysticism do is to encourage and to help a devotee reach a stage of courage and confidence in their life when they are able to have a divine experience of their own. Nizamuddin was guided by his mentor Baba Farid, and following in the master's footsteps, he inspired his devotees to do the same. Talking about Nizamuddin is a joyful exercise that can last a lifetime. You have to agree with me. If you are ready to join me in following in the footsteps of Nizamuddin, let's continue the conversation. But for today, let's take a break here and now and close this talk right here, leaving it to you, dear audience, to decide whether you found any parallels with the time of Nizamuddin and today. And if you are at all inspired to emulate the life of Nizamuddin and Amir Khusro chose to live, even when challenged with difficult social, political, and cultural turmoil that had hovered around them. But not before reciting Chap Tilak for you one more time to see if you find something a little more in the reading this time round than in the first reading. So here goes Chap Tilak in English. Your gaze locked on me. You stripped me of my beauty, my worth. You offer me a drink, a cup of love. Your gaze locked on me, and I on a high. I stake all that I have for you, Nijam, my body, my soul. You have made me you. His gaze locked on you. Your life, Khusro, is no longer yours. Khusro, you are now Nijam. His gaze locked on you, Khusro, as Nijam reaches out for the fair wrist of Khusro, dyed in his color, his beautiful bride. His gaze locked on you, stripped of your beauty, stripped of your worth, by his gaze locked on you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, man. Many wanted to for you to recite the same Nazmin in the original version. So if you can.
You know, the original version I have here, there are many, many versions of Chap Tilak. You know, there's Abida Parveen who says, uh, तुम बुलाओ ना बुलाओ मैं आऊंगी तुम्हारे पास तुम मुझे छोड़ दो मैं ना छोड़ूंगी तुम्हें in Punjabi but so we there are many versions but the one I chose to make the English version. Why is this not moving? I think okay, so it goes छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाए के. This of course is for is better in music and when sung by a beautiful vocalist. So छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाए के प्रेम भटी का मधवा पिलाए के मतवाली कर लेनी मुझसे नैना मिलाए के. So you know when you have a union only with the look, then you have surpassed the material world, the tangible world, and you have entered the spiritual world. Because even without touching, you have made me yours. You understand? I hope the translation is not disturbing the reading. So, छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुझसे नैना मिलाए के प्रेम भटी का मधवा पिलाए के Matwali, so I don't need to drink a goblet of alcohol because I'm intoxicated with your love. Prem bhati ka madhva pilai ke, matwali karlini re muse naina milai ke. गोरी गोरी बैया हरी हरी चूड़िया, गोरी गोरी बैया हरी हरी चूड़िया, बैया पकड़ धर ली नीरे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के, बल बल जाऊं मैं तोरे रंग रजवा, बल बल जाऊं मैं तोरे रंग रजवा, अपनी सी कर ली नीरे मुझसे नैना मिलाई के। सो खुसरो निजाम के बल बल जाए, मोहे सुहागन कीनी रे मोसे नैना मिलाई के। Chap, tilak, chap is the jewelry you wear on your head, tilak is the bindi, you know, all the ornamentation, the makeup. Chap, tilak, sab chini re mose naina milai ke. So beautiful. Thank you.
Indeed. And one thing, one anecdote
Let me
from,
put on some light. It's become
yeah.
dark now. जी जी जी
So one
फरमाइए।
anecdote that we missed in today's conversation was this episode in Khusro's life when he recited a couple of verses outside Nizamuddin's door, and that became a tradition of celebrating Basant. So it
Right,
was
right.
Sakal Ban Phul Rahi,
जी जी जी
Sarso. Okay, I'm forgetting the lyrics, but I read that out. कि सकल बन फूल रही सरसों, उमवा बोरे टेसू फूले, कोयल बोले डार डार, और गोरी करत सिंगार, मलनिया गधवा लाई करसों. So that
क्या
was
बात।
every field is filled with yellow mustard blooms, mango bud open, flame of the forest trees blossom, every branch echoes with the koel's call. The lovely maiden dons her makeup, the garden ladies bring fragrant bouquets. So that is a translation that I found in Rana Safi's article on the scroll
जी
that
जी
I
जी
read
एब्सोल्युटली
recently.
जी
So there's a very interesting story behind that. So if you can
जी
share
जी।
that story with us.
So the story is it must have been 800 years ago at this time of the year, exactly this time of the year, which is Basant. We just celebrated Basant 2 3 days ago, and Nizamuddin did never married, and he did not have children of his own. So, but he was very fond of his sister's children. And one of the sons of his sister, his nephew, passed away. So he was very, very gloomy, and he was heartbroken, and he was very sad. And for many days, nobody had seen him smile. So this, of course, was very painful for Amir Khusro, to see his beloved mentor so tortured. So he was wondering how to bring back the zest, the joy back into Nizamuddin's life. So Khusro was walking on the street, and he saw uh, rows and rows of women dressed in yellow clothes, looking very beautiful and singing on their way. So, this is also a description of a very typical field uh, at Basant at this time of the year in Western UP. So, if you go to Western UP, the fields are like this, the koel is singing, and aam ke chote chote फूल और फल फूट रहे हैं. And so he was mesmerized by the background, by the landscape against which these beautiful maidens dressed in yellow were walking. And so he stopped somebody and asked, he said, what are you doing? What is this singing? And they said, we are celebrating uh, uh, Basant. We are celebrating the end of winter, the beginning of spring, and we then share mustard flowers with us. Probably gende ka phool. So Amir Khusro, who was also an extrovert. He was mischievous, and that is why um, the relationship of Amir Khusro and Nizamuddin was so attractive to each other because they were like kind of polar opposite. Nizamuddin was introverted. He was soft and gentle, and Amir Khusro was a man of the world. He was verbose, and he was always exaggerating. So when he heard the story, he dressed up like one of these women in yellow clothes and carrying flowers in his hand. He danced his way in front of Nizamuddin, and Nizamuddin was so amused, according to legend, that he started smiling and was happy once again. So this is the beautiful story. There are tons and tons of stories of the intimacy, the friendship, the joy that both these people derived from even a second of being together with each other. वो एक पूरा समा का माहौल है when Amir Khusro would sing and recite, and Nizamuddin Aulia was filled with such ecstasy that even he would stand up and start, if not dancing, at least circling or making dance moves. So there are people who like what they heard today should read up on their own, because this is a fascinating story which nobody can tell you. You have to discover it, from different texts. Ji Isha.
Indeed. And there are a couple of questions. And this one is from Avirup Ghosh, and his question is Nizamuddin Aulia and Amir Khusro are more relevant than now. Okay, this is not a question, this is a comment from him. With the kind of world we are living in, there's a great need for spirituality, love, and peace. And I
Yes,
think
so
that is very true.
somebody has to, yes, this was the whole idea, isn't it, of talking about these two people today. That, these two people, they revolutionized society through practice of love. They had no army, they had no money, they had no guns, they had no, they were respected, they had respect, and they used the respect people held for them to convince them, to make them also practice love like they did. So Nizamuddin was very conscious that he was not living alone in his home. He was visited by hundreds and thousands of people, and they were watching what he would eat, how he would dress. So he was very conscious that he has to set an example that will inspire the poorest of the poor to feel happy. You understand? So what we have to do, the inspiration we get as individual citizens from this story is that we are never helpless, but we have to use our head. We don't have to imitate Nizamuddin Aulia and Amir Khusro, but we have to use our head and use all the creativity that is given to us by nature to think of a solution that will resolve our problem today. We cannot wait for a Masiha. We cannot wait for somebody to lead us, or we cannot wait to have an army or to have a bank account which will be enough to change society. We can do it by the sheer spiritual will which is which is uh, which is there in all of us. So this I wanted to talk about this to make individual ordinary citizens, the aam aadmi, feel not helpless, that we can do something. What we can do, we still don't have the answer. This is what we have to all sit down and think.
Definitely. And there is a question of Hassan Shihab, and
Ji
his
Shihab
question
Bhai.
is that can you shed some light on the Tariqat-e-Chishti, the illustrious Chishti order in the dissemination of love, compassion, and tolerance?
Hishab Sab, you have to. There are beautiful texts. You have to read it on your own because there is a general uh, uh, order, style of the Chishtis, but each Auliya from the same order also has his own uh, way of practicing the tariqa. So this is a very long discourse which cannot be answered in a line or two. So the answer to your question is you must do a lot of reading if you're interested on your own.
We'll take two or three more questions before we end today's section, and it is from Mr. Pizzalo. Okay, that's a page, I think. And the question is, could you talk about the relation between the religious mainstream, the Maulavis, and Nizamuddin Dargah and Amir Khusro?
The relationship between the clergy and the official clergy, the ulema, because there was the king, and then he would appoint a haji, a qazi, who was the judge, who was like a present day judiciary, and most of the qazis were from the community of ulema. So the ulema did not like the independence of the spirit of the Sufis. They wanted the Sufis to realize, to adore, to worship Allah through the ulema. So this was very tricky. The Sufi said, I don't need a middleman, I don't need a medium. I can, uh, I would like to take the trouble of conversing with my creator on my own. Whether I fail or succeed, I don't care, but I would like to do. So, there is also, if you read uh, this book, Nizamuddin Aulia's for the Morals of the Heart, you will come across an incident where the sultan was so fed up of the arguments that took place endlessly between the ulama who and the qazi, who were government employees, and the Sufi, the head of the Chishti order, whether it was Baba Farid, Nizamuddin Aulia, or after him Chirag Nasiruddin Dilli. Uh, there is like a court case between where Nizamuddin has to explain to the qazi, to the judge, to the sultan, why sama, the playing of music and the enjoyment of poetry, and just the hosting of a sama um, is essential to Sufis, because the ulama also banned ये नाच गाना, ये ढोलक बजाना is not, is un-Islamic. So Nizamuddin put up a very convincing argument as to why he needs to host sama musical evenings at his khanqa. So again, you have to. It was a very tricky relationship. Sometimes when the ulama was kind-hearted and Roshan Khayal, then the relationship was better. But most of the time, the ulama was, very couldn't see beyond his nose, and then it became very tricky. When you try to interpret the Quran, which is also has a very mystical you can also interpret the Quran in a very mystical way. So if you do it literally, then there is always trouble between the poet and the 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 man with the poor intellect.
So the last question for the evening is from Nehal Ahmed, and his question is: can you please
Nihal.
tell some books to understand Khusro and Nizamuddin Aulia?
Oh my God, the bookshops are full. They are full of books on these people. I would say please start by getting my book called the Book of Nizamuddin Aulia, where there are stories also of Amir Khusro. You know, by the time I wrote the Book of Muhammad, Book of Nizamuddin Muinuddin Chishti, Nizamuddin Aulia, I got a little bit fatigued, but it is on the card to complete the trilogy by doing a book also on Amir Khusro. So uh, my book is called the Book of Nizamuddin Aulia. Please start by reading that, and if you need more information, then I mean the sky is the limit. There are lots and lots of books.
Definitely. Thank you so much, ma'am, for doing this session,
Pleasure,
ta-
pleasure.
for taking out time for to coming on our platform, to interacting with people, and to speak about such an important topic in today's contemporary times.
Always
About
welcome.
love in today's time,
जी, जी, जी.
and
No,
it was
love
truly
is
an
so
honor to host you.
elusive because
Yes,
love is something that is elusive. वो पानी की तरह फिसल जाता है, तो it's very difficult to define love. लोग कहेंगे कि how do I practice love? You know, like people say, the first line in my book of Muhammad is, um, uh, once upon a time, there lived a man who changed the course of history by simply being good. तो लोगों ने पूछा being good क्या होता है? What do you mean good? So I'm so glad that at least we are thrashing out these very poetic, intangible, spiritual topics. उसी में से ये गपशप में से वाद विवाद में से कॉन्वर्सेशन में से ही कुछ निकलेंगे जवाब हम लोगों को. So thank
bilkul.
you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you so much everybody who joined us live this evening. More than 200 people were with us on live, so that's a very big number for Carvan. And the lecture
I
will
hope
be available on the YouTube channel of Carvan in just an hour. So we'll upload it as soon as possible. Plus, those who wish to donate to Carvan, please do so. We have a link. We have sent the link on the live chat because we are struggling to get paid Zooms. So if you want to see more of our sessions, please do contribute. Thank you so much, and thank you so much, ma'am, for taking our time. It was truly an honor.
Adab from Lucknow. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Thank you.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Yeah, you too, Ishan. Bye bye. Thank you, audience.